The town of Sandwich, Massachusetts was the first colonial establishment on Cape Cod. The inns, churches, homes, and businesses of the village continue to reflect its early heritage. The mostly residential neighborhood of today was once recognized as a center of industry. Earlier, it was a farming community. The Cape Cod Bay location has led to one aspect of the town's character that has remained constant through the years. Whether for employment, food, pleasure, or solitude, the people of this community, both young and old, have always been drawn to the sea. In the 1870s, a structure was built only a short walk from the center of town, down where the upland gives way to the marsh and the shoreline beyond. That structure was a simple walkway crossing Mill Creek, but it would capture the hearts and imagination of generations to come.
I call this Sandwich Town meeting to order, June 12, 1875. Article 1. To see if the town will vote to accept the Commissioner's report for the laying out of the footway to the beach, and to raise and appropriate money for same. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it is voted to raise and appropriate $500 for this project. Also, it is requested that the work be done as cheaply as possible.
Gustavus Howland was hired for the job and immediately began the work. The first simple bridge across the creek was opened for use just 3 weeks later on July 3, 1875. Crossing Mill Creek was now much easier, but the rest of the journey across the marsh remained a trek through the salt grass and mud.
At that time, everybody lived around the village. They didn't live in South Sandwich and all those places. And this was the access to the beach for everybody. If you wanted to go to the beach, you came here.
Throughout the years, numerous appropriations were secured to help finance the cost of maintenance, repairs, and extensions to the bridge. The wooden plank walk grew to replace the pathway and eventually connect the upland to the beach. When New England storms and the effects of time combined to demand repairs and rebuilding, the town always responded. In 1991, Mother Nature handed Cape Cod and the New England coast a vicious 1-2 combination. On August 19th, a direct hit by Hurricane Bob brought winds surging up to 120 miles per hour from the south. Broken trees, smashed buildings, and days without electrical power remained in the wake of this major storm. Property damage was in the millions on Cape Cod alone. Tourists left in droves, and few returned. In late October of the same year, a North Atlantic low-pressure system began intensifying and backing in towards the coastline. For 3 miserable days, the relentless wind, rain, and sea continued to build. Then, in the gloom of high tide on October 30th, the fury of the storm reached a pounding climax. This was a monster nor'easter that left enormous coastal destruction. The boardwalk, which was already weakened beyond use by Hurricane Bob, was now mostly washed away. At a time when schools, the fire department, police, and other municipal services were feeling budget cuts, would anyone find a way to preserve this unique piece of town history?
It had to be repaired, that's all there was to it. But it's one of those things that could lay dormant and never get done.
Who was this? Was it a local politician? Someone primarily interested in self-promotion? No. Dean Coe was a dreamer. Just a guy who loved the sea and this walkway to it. Dean believed the boardwalk could be rebuilt, and he was determined to find a way. He not only outlined a creative strategy for the project itself, he confidently proposed a party to celebrate the success. In doing so, he became its leadership and inspiration.
Today's been planned for 9 months. And when I first started, our first meeting, I said, we're here to plan a party. Oh no, we got a little work to do first.
Dean's first effort was to rally a group of like-minded individuals. Those who responded to his call were townspeople of all ages and backgrounds. This group included a plumber, a restaurant owner, a lawyer, a beautician, and journalist, to name a few.
And I really didn't have any plans except that I had figured if it's going to take money from the community and we're going to have to raise money to do this, then we're probably going to have some sort of a campaign, and I had determined that selling the planks would be probably the most viable option. And there was definitely a spirit of, we don't know how we're going to get it done, but we're going to get it done. And from that point on, it became a group effort, and everybody contributed in their own way as best they could. The group became double focused. One was for fundraising, the other was for demolition and construction.
The individual committees followed up on Dean's original idea and confirmed that the boardwalk, at nearly 1,000 feet long, would need almost 1,500 new planks. Selling inscribed boards began to sound like a terrific and lucrative idea.
We decided $40, 15 letters was going to be what the basic price was. $100 would get you 25 letters and a water view. The elite boards were on the bridge, and that eventually got changed when we ran out of bridge boards and people still wanted to put 25 letters on, and they could do that later on at any other place. A sign carver was laid off from his job. Clint said he would be happy to work on carving the signs, carving the boards, and we did put that out to a bid process. Clint Young not only submitted the lowest bid, but it was what I would call a charitable bid. It really allowed us to come in on budget. It was slow at first. There were people weren't sure that this was going to work, and were they going to cough up the money to put a plank down and be one of 10 people in the town that responds. So we really didn't know how it was going to go, and but everybody that was involved was operating on a basic faith that this thing was going to happen. I can remember a meeting when we were talking about selling planks, and Louise Haley said, "We're going to sell out. We're going to sell them all." And I thought to myself, I'm chairman, I have to be supportive of her idea, but there's no way we're going to sell out. Dory Cook was the first business person in the community to come through and say, in December I will donate 50% of my proceeds that come in from my boardwalk print. And that kicked off a bit of a response for some other business people.
Many local businesses became involved in their own fundraising efforts. Captain Scott's Restaurant and Alice's Hairstyling joined in. Others included the Marshland Restaurant, the print shop, and most of the real estate offices in the town.
Then Ben Neal came forward, and I can't really say Ben Neal came forward. Ben's too humble to come forward. Ben's wife and my wife had a conversation, and Mary Ann said Ben would probably be willing to do a painting. So Ben did a painting of the boardwalk, and Barry Penske came forward with his chainsaw carved bear, and those two things would be raffled off.
Originally, everyone believed a significant portion of the Boardwalk Foundation was salvageable. Upon closer inspection of what remained, it became apparent the bridge pilings were too weak to support new construction. The posts still standing in the marsh were unusable. Hope for a basic repair job faded with the realization of the need for complete replacement. Cost estimates soared. Suddenly, every dollar raised had to be stretched even further.
Construction was as low budget as we could do it. Parts of the old were saved. I don't know how many hours Richard Currier spent at the town barn pounding nails out of old boards so that they could be reused.
Dick Currier himself became an essential part of the reconstruction process. A retired sea captain and Sandwich native, he assumed command of a curious construction team assembled from the town and beyond.
I asked when I was down there one day, what do you guys call yourselves? And somebody said, we're the Geezers.
The gang that we worked with, I mean, the Geezer Brigade, it is a pretty interesting group of guys, a lot of history, a lot of good old stories, and a lot of talent. We had some real serious talent out here.
I didn't know anyone in town, and I came here for the first time in January, and fell in love with the whole space, the whole project, and decided to donate 6 weeks at a time.
That's wonderful. So you were just passing through and decided to spend a little time with us?
Well, yeah. I was here with somebody I was deeply in love with, and she fell out of love with me, and I fell in love with the boardwalk.
Oh, I thought it was a great thing. I met some very, very nice guys that I probably never would have met besides being here, and it really was enjoyable.
Most of the real estate offices in town became active in the fundraising by selling T-shirts. The Century 21 office at Merchant Square became the base of operations for plank sales. Although committee volunteers staffed the sales desk on weekends, during the week, Century 21 sales agents occasionally found themselves selling more planks than houses. We would just love it if you would give us a few words about how this whole project has affected your life in the last few months. Why don't we start with you, Debbie?
Plank by plank is how it affected our lives, all 1,700 of them.
Oh, yes, we've been at it since November, and it's been a wonderful committee. I've never met such nice people and with such enthusiasm.
It was just great to see the people so excited coming through the office.
It was. Well, yeah, it was just wonderful, yeah.
We just hope that there's not another storm anytime in the near future.
Planks started selling, and maybe the first holiday was Christmas, and people started buying for Christmas gifts. And as the paperwork came in, it was great because so many of the inscriptions were esoteric with little bits of humor.
Through the months of January and February, Clint Young began carving the hundreds of planks that had already been ordered. The encouraging increase in plank sales boosted the enthusiasm of everyone on the committee. While the fundraisers and Clint continued their projects, activity was underway out on the marsh. The wreckage of the old boardwalk was finally being removed. Everything reusable was being sorted out in preparation for new construction.
And by winter, we had pretty well, the crew had pretty well taken out all of the old, and we were ready to begin the new, and of course, weather simply would not permit that, so we had to wait until spring. Not what I call spring, it was March.
Well, we started this the second week in March. The temperature was approximately 30 with a northwest wind blowing of around 15 to 20 knots. And it was quite an exciting day to be out here trying to pound nails, wear all your clothes, and not smash your thumb.
In March it was cold, down to 10 above. Very cold.
Yeah.
Hands were cold, feet were cold, head was cold.
In fact, I can remember mornings we couldn't see each other 10 feet away and just cold, socked-in fog.
How did you get those posts down?
Well, originally we used a hammer, a 16-pound sledgehammer, and once we got out into the marsh, we had to drive the post down a little bit deeper. So the depths of the posts were now around 10 feet, so it was kind of hard to drive them with a sledgehammer. So what we did was carry staging down, set the staging up, and then one man would stand on top of the staging, well balanced in a precarious position, with a jackhammer, and jackhammer the post down into the ground. That wasn't too bad until we got out into the marsh again, where it was slip and slide. We did a lot of slipping and sliding with a 40 and 50 pounds jackhammer.
As the boardwalk began to take shape, the pace of all activities picked up. Plank sales increased as news spread that only a few hundred remained available. And as the weather warmed, boardwalk t-shirts were being seen on the streets of Sandwich. The first planks were actually in place as the curious came out to watch. And the geezers realized that a lot of people would want to walk from end to end at the party that had been proposed so many months ago.
In the fundraising, there were, besides the planks and the t-shirts, we had a fundraising event at Horizons. Committee members approached the management of Horizons to see if we could tie something up with an opening of their grand opening for the season and our fundraising event. The Horizons party was the introduction of the Boardwalk Shuffle. Then we had an auction, and the Sandwich Auction House folks were very generous in giving us their space and an evening, and that was a $4,000 success story. And it was at that point that I met for the first time a woman by the name of Kohar Bartlett, who I had talked with on the phone, but said, I'd like to do something a little more than just buying a board, and we talked about some special project.
The contribution that Kohar and her family had in mind was generous enough to fund an entirely new addition to the project. The boardwalk was genuinely accessible for the first time.
The momentum kept building. New people became involved, and we had, in the beginning, picked June 14th as our target date, and we figured we could probably get it done by then. And a small group began to put together the final celebration party. That was actually held, it was June 14th.
The party would occur as scheduled, but in order for the boardwalk to be ready, the geezers had to shift into overdrive. During those hectic days, literally hundreds of planks were set in place.
If we get number one now, yeah.
I don't think we need the nail now. No, we don't.
No, that's what I said.
You're still going to need the space.
No, not, okay, but yeah, but not the nail.
What number is that?
The very last one was nailed down only hours before the celebration began. How many people are you clowns expecting to have here today?
The police, actually, we figured 2,000 to 3,000. They said 3,000 to 4,000.
I think it's great. You know, I've been here almost 22 years, and I think this project has brought together more groups of people, individual people, community groups, businesses than any other project I've seen.
The party was great. Thousands came to Town Neck Beach to celebrate the reopening of this historic walkway to the sea. There was plenty going on.
The plankers are marching through the town, I just can't take it anymore. Everybody hit the floor, turn out the lights and bolt the doors down.
A bucket of water from the well at Town Hall Square was brought in by helicopter. The time had come to make it official. As the pilot fought gusting winds, Cindy Roy aimed. And the boardwalk was back in business.
that's hard to come up with a number of hours, because there have been quite a few days that they've been down here full-time, quite a few days that they've been down here part-time. So there's probably been close to 400 hours down here without any exaggeration.
Well, I don't think I've worked any harder than most of the other fellas have. It's been a real community effort, and I don't think you could point your finger at one guy who did more than another. Everybody did the best that they knew how to do, and that's all that counts.
Still, it was Dean's leadership that got the job done. At a special town meeting in August 1992, the residents of Sandwich expressed their thanks.
It's fitting that a year after Hurricane Bob has struck our town, that I've been asked to recognize my friend Dean Cole for all he's done to unite our community and rekindle the spirit of Sandwich in the wake of Hurricane Bob. Could you come up here for a moment, please, Dean?
We're not finished. There's another project, and that is to tie in the existing boardwalk with the walk that goes over the dunes, and to have a deck available for people who cannot walk the sand, who would like to be able to sit and watch the sea and look at the bay. I have been asked many, many times why this project was as successful as it was. And I still don't know the answer to the question. But there was an energy that was created, that this structure in itself created. That boardwalk represents it's a fabric. And in its fabric are the threads of this community, the spirit.
You've seen the kids down there jumping off that thing.
Yeah.
I was one of them in 1928, maybe? Yeah. Oh, sure. We did the same thing.
Got married on a kiss, got married on